Hillary has been lengthening her excuses as to why she lost the election. She didn't really lose the election. It was stolen from her by, I think it's up to 24 different excuses she has now. Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia. And as I said, my grandfather was a Macedonian content farmer, and we often think about, gathering on the porch and recalling the old days on the Macedonian. He never thought that the old content farmers he left behind in Macedonia would one day steal the U.S. presidential election. They are gnarled, hard-working Macedonian peasants, and the way they were able to reach out...
As Macedonia and Macedonians settled into the Christmas holidays, the new year brings new and good news. Zoran Zaev has resigned ahead of Macedonia's parliamentary elections in April, while members of Zaev's party continue to be charged with various crimes. The Vice President of Parliament, Pocesna, was charged on Friday, January 3rd, with assisting fraud in a new case, stemming from the original racket cases, while the original and central character in the many scandals facing the socialists, Boki 13, is now offering to sing, or at least share more information with the prosecutors. But for most Macedonians, the next few days and week will be a time devoted to God, family, and celebrating Christmas, leaving the politics and problems of the new year for later. We'll discuss all of this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you today from the foot of Vodno Mountain in Skopje, the Republic of Macedonia.
And this is Cvetin Suleimanov, also calling in from Skopje, Republic of Macedonia, underneath Vodno Mountain.
Cheers!
This is the first ever.
This is the first time ever we are recording together in Skopje, the Republic of Macedonia, drinking some very lovely Tikvesh Rakia.
Yep.
With a little bit of Mizar here.
Sponsorship opportunities available at the end of the podcast.
Yeah, we still haven't got that sponsorship, have we yet? We'll talk to some folks while I'm here. So, my first time here for Orthodox Christmas, actually.
Never been here before.
In 24 years of my time with Macedonia and the Macedonians, I lived here for 7 years, from 96 to 2003. But always during that time, I would go home back to Arizona for December 25 Christmas, as so many around here say, the Catholic Christmas, even though that time I was a Protestant and proud of it. But now I'm Macedonian Orthodox, so it's good to be here to celebrate Orthodox Christmas with family and friends.
So you can denigrate the Western faiths as Catholic, Latinic faiths.
Exactly. So. But I've arrived on, I came in here a couple of days ago, I think on the 2nd. I always get jet lagged. But it was kind of funny. Yesterday I was visiting with a lot of friends, and they said, the rumor's going to be spread that you came in here just to make sure that Zaev actually did resign.
We were not sure for a while. It was touch and go. I mean, you don't believe it until you actually see the signed resignation letter, and even then,
exactly.
you want to double check with that person.
Yeah. So, but Zaev did resign.
Yep.
And now Oliver Spasovsky, the former Minister of Interior, is now the acting. What is his actual title? Is it acting? Is it
we call
interim?
It technical premier, technical or interim or caretaker prime minister.
Right. Well, you got to remember in 2016. Was it 15 when Gruevski stepped down?
It was
15.
He was early 2015 or
early 2015, right? And
late 2015. So he had resigned for the whole of 2016. He was touch and go. Is he going to come back? Is he going to remain?
Right. That's because who was the prime minister then?
Emil Dimitriev.
Dimitriev. That's right. Yeah. And so the whole point back then was, and of course, this is per Perezhino. There were supposed to be elections scheduled for X date after Gruevski stepped down, and then the colorful revolutionaries kept insisting that, well, the voter rolls aren't clean, and we got to keep checking this, and we got to do this, and we got to do this, and so they kept delaying it. And so the technical prime minister at that time then basically became the prime minister for over a year.
Eventually, Vimera got out of the whole deal because it was clear SDSM will not go to elections.
Right.
So they reformed the political government. They kicked the SDSM members of government out, but they couldn't reach an agreement with Ahmeti. Ahmeti was now also becoming prickly. He wouldn't let Gruevski return as prime minister, so Dimitriev remained as a political prime minister for a few months. And then we held the elections, and the result, Vomera won, but with the Albanian with a siphoning of Albanian votes in favor of SDSM, probably orchestrated by the U.S. Embassy, which we now see.
We can see it from the. We are recording in the global, galactic, universal world headquarters of the Macedonian Content Farmers podcast. I've got a great view of winter in Skopje here. Can't quite see the fortress on Kale. Meaning,
that's the air pollution there.
Meaning the American embassy. Yeah, actually, I was surprised. I thought I was going to be choking as I walked the streets of Skopje, and for the first day and a half, it wasn't too bad. Today's, I understand, it's pretty bad, but
we weirdly had a few weeks of strong wind.
Yeah,
and that cleared things up. I mean, it's not by design. It's not that horrible. Half of the city is heated on heated water, which is heated with gas, so it's not
right.
An outright cataclysmic like Indian style or Nigerian style catastrophe. But we need the wind to make it work, and most often we don't get it in winter. It's because it's all rimmed with mountains and it's all flatland in the middle.
Yeah. But going back to, Spasovsky is the technical prime minister during this time. Elections are set for April 12. Parliament dissolves February 11 or something like that. And now we have some new characters, new individuals in the Macedonian government from the Vumaro Domine, which includes the interior minister and the minister of health, welfare.
Yeah,
right. And who are they?
Labor and welfare.
Right.
The health guy remains.
And who's the interior now?
Nakir Chulaf. He lives close by.
Okay.
He was the second choice. I mean, the first choice was this Colonel Dragan Kovački, who I hadn't heard of before. He was in the Special Army Forces, etc. But because he was still an active colonel, and we have this constitutional obligation that I think a minister who controls the security department, like the defense or the police, needs to have been a civilian for at least 3 years before being appointed to the position, like to prevent a coup. Although all of the troubles we've ever had were from the police, never from the army.
Yeah. Well, this is like what we had with James Mattis when he was defense secretary. He hadn't been gone long enough, so from the military. So
yeah, but throughout Yugoslavia, the army was the big culprit of often of the wars. But in Macedonia, the army was mostly restrained throughout our independence. But all the violations came from the secret police service, the UBK, DBK. And the president now came from the Interior Ministry, Stevo Pendarovski. SDSM's candidate for president in the previous elections. Frčkovski also came from the Interior Ministry. So, obviously the police and the security services tilt heavily toward SDSM, toward the old Communist Party, where they have been formed. So they have always been the problem. Well, the army was, like in other countries, considered more noble, more genteel, more distinguished. But still, SDSM insisted that we stop the appointment process of Kovački. And then shortly after, Vumaro came up with Nakir Chulaf, who was director of the intelligence agency, one of the two intelligence agencies we have, the smaller one, which is run by the president. So he was appointed by Ivanov.
Ah, right.
So, we can expect him to be a more... And he quickly came out that he had a long family tradition of being Vumaro, to the point that his grandfather was being persecuted by the communists after World War II for being a prominent local Vumaro organizer and voivoda even. So yeah, this is the pedigree of the new interior minister. And SDSM people are already approaching him and asking to help them. Most famously, most ridiculously yesterday, Frosina Remensky, the SDSM official deputy speaker of parliament, who was charged of racketeering with Boki, and she had a statement yesterday, said, and I hope that we will have good cooperation with the new interior minister. Wink, wink. So she's basically announcing she's getting ready to sing like a canary to the new interior minister.
Well, and as I mentioned in the opening monologue, Boki is talking about singing. We're going to have an absolute chorus here pretty soon of people that have been charged with various crimes under the former Prime Minister Zoran Zaev.
So many shoes dropped yesterday, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's just, well, it's kind of like it's the Friday news dump.
Yeah.
And today is actually, we're recording this episode 55 on Saturday, January 4, 2020, the first podcast of 2020. So yes, it was the Friday news dump. All the information comes out, and this is a long weekend for Macedonians with Bodnik, Christmas Eve on Monday, and Christmas on Tuesday the 7th. So yeah, they wanted to get all that stuff out there and bury it and whatnot, as Macedonians are, as a rightly paying more attention, I think, now to the fact that this is the Christmas holidays and time for devotion to God, to family and faith and tradition, and all of the things that the socialists are not.
Yeah.
So,
but he's now the new face, and still not sure whether he has the authority to order arrests. Now we are all widely expecting that Vemera has a cache of information on Zaev, and which will be made public as soon as the elections are finalized. Now they're not finalized yet.
True.
The parliament needs to dissolve on February 11th. If SDSM again tries some funny business to get out of this, they might try to prevent Vemera and the Albanian parties from acquiring 61 votes and dissolving parliament. But as we said, there were some rumors, some signs of defections from SDSM yesterday, so it's possible that it's no longer stoppable, that it's now unstoppable avalanche going toward elections, but theoretically it could still be stopped if parliament is not dissolved on February 11th, and we'll see whether, the incriminating dumps from Vemera come now in this period before February 11th, or after parliament is dissolved and everything is like cast in stone. So it's certain that we have elections. Vemera people they had a press conference even announcing the serial number of the USB drive which contains information on Zaev.
Right. Yeah.
There is even a Twitter account of the USB drive, and people are speculating what's on it. So it's basically a repeat of the 2015-2016 leaks of damaging information against your opponent and a technical government. Vemera do not have a prosecutor who could order arrests of SDSM officials if in line of the racketeering trials which are ongoing, or if some new information surfaces. But obviously existing prosecutors could also change sides if they sense that SDSM is sinking, and it's been hard work for Zaev to prevent more of his people or himself being charged for racketeering. So far it was only Remensky that is charged so far. Another person, Kiratsovsky, was widely rumored to be charged alongside with her, the former Secretary General of the party. It's Kiki and Friki, this moniker, but so far he is off the hook. Zaev himself, obviously, his healthcare minister Vinko Filipče was apparently involved in a lot of racketeering.
Dan Donchev, the director of the Health Fund.
Radmila Shekirinska, the defense minister, she was actively, meeting, she was close with Boki 13, with the organizer of the scandals, the guy at the center of the scandals, and her close relative was a prominent part of the bogus charity which Boki set up, which is now the focus of these new charges, which involve Remensky. So it doesn't take much to charge them. It was hard work preventing the prosecutors from charging anybody from SDSM so far.
Right. And then, of course, as mentioned in the opening monologue, Boki 13 himself.
Yeah.
So he, I think that was a current picture I saw in the media
I think it was correct,
report, which he was looking quite perky and quite happy, which was unusual.
Yeah.
So I think we predicted here on this podcast a few weeks ago that we'd be surprised if he survived the winter, if he wasn't Epsteined, to create a new verb. And so we're surprised by that. Thank you for that, Rakia Cvetin. What's he saying? Be a little more generous on the board there. So come on. So
trying to take it easy here. All right. Yeah, this is a unique opportunity.
Yeah, because normally when we're recording the podcast, I'm in the States. It's still morning my time, which I'm not adverse or opposed to drinking in the morning, but it's just a bit uncouth.
Yeah, poor form.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
No, Boki said, he was visibly perked up. There was even a report which was then kind of like denied, but it came from Telma, which is nominally pro-government, so it should be on the merit that while Boki and Katica Janeva were entering the courthouse for the hearing yesterday, which coincided with Zaev's resignation and all the grand stuff that was happening. As I said, all the shoes were dropping yesterday at the same time. And somebody, Tilma reported that Yaneva was told Happy New Year, that Boki was visibly, much more boisterous and perked up, said Happy New Year to everybody, to all the journalists who were assembling for his trial, while Katica was more subdued, but she allegedly said, and Zaev is down now, I see. So it was seen as very ominous announcement from Katica. But then she didn't say much more. This was denied afterwards. But then Boki was pretty open in the trial. He said, I'm trying to meet the prosecutor Joveski, the attorney general, our equivalent, but he won't meet me. I wrote to the US Embassy telling them that I have information to give, but that Joveski is not seeing me. I wrote to the Helsinki Committee, the French Embassy, which is now the big corrective of the Zaev regime, with withholding the EU accession talks. And he didn't say over what, but it's widely assumed, the one thing that remained unrevealed is, where did the money go?
Right, exactly.
Where's the beef?
Yeah.
And Boki said that he had some recordings from his home showing people, which could reveal information who actually picked up this infamous Louis Vuitton bag with 500,000, 1.5 million in total. He had 2 collections from the businessman Kamchev. So the recording should have government officials who were visiting Boki in his home constantly. Some of them probably left with the bag, otherwise Boki wouldn't mention this. So he's now preparing to sing along with Reminsky, and Zaev is looking in much bigger predicament. He looked yesterday than before.
Right, and Boki is, at least according to media reports, claiming that he's a political prisoner, quote unquote, now. And that was interesting to me, to see that he's a political prisoner, a victim, quote unquote, of the former Prime Minister Zoran Zaev. I just like saying that, by the way. I'll just keep saying the former Prime Minister Zoran Zaev. You're right. I think it presents more problems. And as we said, we've talked about this on this podcast several times, that this constant slow media drip of bad news for Zaev, for Citizen, for the socialists, as we lead up to the elections. It's constantly in the news. Whether it's a big news day or a slow news day, it's constantly in the news, one way or the other, and it's going to continue to be up until the April elections and then beyond, because there's going to be a fallout from that, and new revelations to come out. Speaking of new, Branko Geroski, the journalist that originally broke this way back in May, June, something like that, of last year, he's been quiet, or has...
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
He was, but he said he'll reveal something after the vacation. I mean, I don't trust this person one bit. He's obviously strong SDSM supporter during the Colored Revolution, very, dubious character. But, the stuff he published, it showed that he published this in concert with prosecutor Vilma Ruskovska, who brought the charges against Katica Yaneva and Boki 13. I'm not gonna... I don't believe they had any good intentions with this, fighting crime and corruption. They probably thought they can bring down the SDSM leadership to some extent and elevate themselves as the main media sponsors of the, the power brokers of the new SDSM leadership. He said something after New Year. He was caught up in these later leaks. After Kamchev testified, remember there was a leak from a conversation he had apparently in Bulgaria with his friends, where he is discussing Boki's, homosexuality. He's talking about Gerovsky, saying that, basically implying that he's feeding Gerovsky with information, and Gerovsky is gonna publish this. And the leak, it was somebody who was sitting with Kamchev and recording him secretly, and the leak also was meant to exculpate Zaev too. So it was apparently came from Zaev's corner. And then Gerovsky was angry at this, and he said, well, okay, wait until New Year is done and then we'll talk. So he has ambitions of being a force in SDSM and appointing the next leaders of SDSM. Speaking of which, obviously, we have new faces, in which Vemberg have appointed this new labor and welfare minister, Rashila Mizrahi, the first Jewish member of government.
Wow.
With a Actually, does Gliver count? His mom is Jewish,
yeah,
I
true,
think.
yes.
And it stems from the maternal side.
Right.
Okay, so maybe second Jewish member of government we've ever had. So a daughter of a prominent lawyer here in Skopje and one of the few families which survived the Holocaust. So she's now in charge of making sure that the abuse of labor and welfare funding, which is enormous, it's one of the biggest, most moneyed ministries in the government, and is widely abused, to give money to
Buying votes, basically.
Roma,
Yeah.
poor
Yeah.
Roma families, poor
Right.
families from all backgrounds before the elections by them. So she's now in charge of, stopping this, not abusing this before in time for elections. But then the labor and welfare minister who she replaced, Mila Tsarovska, she's now having open ambitions to take over. We should dedicate a whole podcast to her at one point.
Okay.
She's now the far left, the Soros wing of the party. We always assumed Shekerinska will be the woman, far left Soros leader of the party and prime minister. She never got to be prime minister, just interim short periods. When she was deputy prime minister, she was always deputy to Buchkovsky, to Crvenkovsky, to everybody.
Always playing second fiddle.
Yeah. But now Tsarovsky is quickly overtaking her, and she's not hiding her ambition. She even had an interview promoting herself as prime minister while everybody pretty much knew that Spasovsky will be the interim prime minister.
Right.
And so these are the new faces. She's now promoted to deputy prime minister in charge of the economy in the place of Kocha Indushev, who had dozens of corruption scandals and is now leaving the government, the party, and
But he's still in as of now, right?
he resigned yesterday.
Oh, he did resign.
Yeah,
Okay. All
to
right.
make
Yeah.
room for
Okay.
Tsarovska.
Right. Okay.
So these are the two new faces to look for. Rashela Mizrahi, the new agriculture minister, deputy minister Vemera promoted. He's also seems very competent, well spoken. So Chulev, Mizrahi, these other deputies, they are the new faces of Vemera. And it's very difficult to pin anything on them. These are, despite all the propaganda campaigns SDSM had against Vemera since 2015, these are all completely new people. And then on the SDSM side, they're heavily investing in Tsarovska, practically the PR guru they brought into SDSM. Now, Kosta Petrov. Now he works.
Yeah, the PR guy.
Yeah, the self-help.
Yeah. This self-help guru.
Yeah.
So.
And he's now practically working exclusively for Tsarovska. He's not working with Zaev. He did this after he promoted her as possible prime minister and turned out it was Spasovsky, then he gave similar treatment to Spasovsky, but it was all forced, all wooden, and not to create a bigger rift in the party before elections. But the challenge is clear. If Zaev loses the elections, the Soros wing is going to try to remove him, and Tsarovska will be the banner, the standard holder.
Interesting. So that's something to watch out for. So I mean, when Citizen loses, of course, in April. So you mentioned, let's talk a little bit about the elections since they are coming up, and we're not gonna. Don't worry, for listeners, we're not going to. This isn't a completely rank punditry podcast on the little details of politics and what goes on here. But the elections coming up, April, 3 months away, basically. And there are reports that the Citizen party is running around, and their surrogates and others are dropping the dreaded N-word from their speeches and whatnot. They're just saying Macedonia instead, and obviously trying to win favor with the Macedonians because they know they're so far behind amongst ethnic Macedonians. They're not going to. I mean, it's kind of farcical, I guess, because everybody knows that they're guilty of having brought in this new name, new identity. And so no matter how many times they try and avoid saying the N-word, people are still going to associate them with what Macedonia has gone through under Citizen since they've been in power, despite the fact that they're trying to avoid the N-word. And then the new ministers that we've just been talking about for Vomero, of course, they're certainly not going to say They're going to say Macedonia.
They said Macedonia.
Yeah.
They signed on documents which say North Macedonia.
Sure.
So this is going to be the test for them.
Yeah, that's going to be a difficult thing to avoid. There's all kinds of creative things that Vumero can do, though. I look back to, I was discussing this with another friend the other day, what Boris Johnson did when it came to close to October 31, when he had to send the letter asking for the extension to the bureaucrats in Brussels. He actually didn't sign the letter, and he said, this is Parliament's decision, not mine. And he did, various creative ways. Yeah. There's always, look, where there's a will, there's a way, and you can be creative in this, and you don't have to sign necessarily documents that say that. And we know, even so, we know at the end of the day where Vumero stands, and where which is with the majority of Macedonians, that this is Macedonia. This is the Republic of Macedonia. We're Macedonians. We speak Macedonian. There's a Macedonian history, culture, language, heritage, etc. None of this fake new stuff that Zoran Zaev foisted illegally and through ignoring the consent of the governed in the 2018 referendum. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of that plays out in the next couple of months.
For my money, I wished Vumero had a stronger position. And name change, they're basically saying we need 81 votes in parliament, which is impossible for
no single party has ever received 81 votes.
Yeah. And the Albanian support on top of this.
Right.
Albanians are gleefully keeping Macedonia named called North Macedonia, so it's impossible. And Vumero is losing some support on the right because of this position. It seems like it's still under serious pressure from the internationals here.
Sure.
And which is basically undermining what little democracy we have left here. People are just considering this.
Of course, the internationals don't actually believe in democracy. No. Democracy is for other people, not for them. The rules are for other people, not for them.
Yeah, sure. But it's going to cost everybody. If such a distorted, disfigured country joins the EU at some point, or even NATO, you can expect all sorts of horrible outcomes, which basically the diplomatic corps here in Skopje ushered in with their treatment of, allowing political arrests of the opposition, blackmail of members of parliament, allowing illegal wiretaps taken out of context to be used as evidence. And then they're going to say, but your rule of law system is out of whack, or your prime minister is the major regional marijuana grower. We'll say, well, yeah, duh. And your actresses are apparently smuggling cocaine to the United Kingdom in submarines. Yeah, sure. What your problem now? You own this place now.
And not only that, but also in general, I've noticed, and this is something I've kind of been paying attention to, the level of crime, not corruption, but crime, shootings, kidnappings, everything throughout the country has really gone up. I think under the former prime minister, I like saying that, the former prime minister Zoran Zaev, and if they were to be reelected, it would continue to go up, unfortunately, and that doesn't contribute to the overall stability of the country, which will soon be a NATO member. Yeah.
I'm assuming that the US ambassador to Greece, Piat, is holding the prime minister of Greece, Mitsotakis, who pledged to, he was opposed to the Prespa treaty, but now does nothing to undermine it. He had this old Siemens corruption scandal, so I assume the evidence of this is being held somewhere in a vault, and he's being told not to push this at least until we join NATO, or even afterwards. They're gonna, the West is gonna have to force this every step of the way. They're gonna have to force the name change, and force us to keep using it, and this completely unnatural treaty. They're gonna have to use force to keep it in place. And Vumero is at this point saying, okay, they're not pushing at all hard on undermining the Prespa treaty. They're fighting Zaev on the corruption front.
Right.
And even we have this ridiculous situation that Zaev is sensing the heat. So he has an interview yesterday morning for Sasha Ordanovsky's outlet, the last outlet which still supports Katica Janova and the Japanese soldiers in the islands. And there he says, I'm very worried about the country. Mitsotakis, the Greek prime minister, is respecting the treaty, but Mickoski, I'm not sure about him. He might become even more nationalist than Gruevski, although Mickoski has done nothing to. He's even annoying people on the right with his lukewarm position. So basically, obviously, Zaev is speaking to the internationals, begging them to support him in these elections, give him the Albanian votes, order Albanians to vote for him again. He says, I fear that Mickoski will even, we have practically joined NATO, that he's going to jeopardize our NATO membership, even with this very, lukewarm position that he needs 81 votes. According to Zaev, even this is dangerous for the Prespa Treaty. Even this, Weimar should drop even this position from. So Zaev is offering himself to the West as the guarantor of Prespa Treaty, no matter all the ridiculous levels of corruption, drug running, migrant smuggling, shootouts in Skopje, which come, and not carrying the support of the Macedonian people, which is going to count at some point if we are going to be a military ally in a restless world, and especially in the Balkans. I mean, it's a completely unstable situation to run the country from the position of a party which is supported by a minority of Macedonians, and all the Albanians put together to outvote the majority population of the country.
Yeah, that whole thing is going to have to be changed at some point, because that's just ridiculous. It's untenable. And it certainly isn't right by any stretch of the imagination or any standard of actual justice.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous. You're right. So that'll have to be changed at some point. I'm not sure how that's going to be done. That's up to very much more creative minds and smarter people than I, far above my pay grade. But I know it can be changed. Anything can be changed. So you mentioned a minute ago there that Zaev is saying that the position of Vomero is threatening Macedonia's entry into NATO, which of course is not true. That's actually a lie. That's fake news. Macedonia is going to get into NATO, no matter what. We're just waiting for the Spanish to actually form a government, mañana, to form a government and then ratify it, and then you're in like Flynn. And actually, that was the Macedonian Parliament was actually debating that the other day. So,
they're getting ready to pre-ratify.
So they'll do that after they come back from the Christmas break.
If the Spaniards don't get their stuff in order until, let's say, early February, I'm sure we'll pre-ratify it.
Yeah. So Zaev's point or his suggestion that Vomero is kind of could torpedo Macedonia's NATO membership is absolutely not true at all.
He's pushing a theory that we can be kicked out of NATO afterwards if we.
No, you can't. Oh, nobody can be kicked. This is the thing. Nobody can be kicked out of NATO. If the Turks can buy Russian missiles and still be a NATO member, you cannot be kicked out of NATO. I promise you that. And if NATO were to ever get to that position where, on a situation like this, Macedonia changes its name back to its rightful name, and somehow they kick them out, and I don't even know what that would look like, how that would be done, then it would show that NATO is actually just a paper tiger. Which is what the Russians want, of course. So,
which it is. I mean, it's currently divided into teams. The Greek and the Turkish team fighting in Libya. They're fighting a proxy war in Libya, although they are allies. And Russia is out. And Greece is allied with Russia in Libya, while Turkey is buying Russian weaponry. And we are sending troops to Mali now to support the French mission. And God knows which side we take in an Iranian confrontation.
Oh dear, yes.
The Europeans are going to be against the US, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
If this happens, not actively, but what does NATO even mean anymore? It's definitely not an alliance to promote free markets.
Well, no, I think NATO is still trying to find its way. I mean, obviously, after 1991 and the collapse of the Soviet Union, its raison d'etre ceased to exist, and then they started going, as our friend Luke Coffey at the Heritage Foundation has said numerous times, that NATO went out of area when it shouldn't have gone out of area, and that's a problem for NATO. They're still trying to figure out what it is. Although I think, and it's facing, I think, still an existential crisis, but the EU is facing an even greater existential crisis, is to trying to figure out where it's going and what it's doing. And I suppose we should touch upon that just a little bit. Now we're in a new year, and this idea that the European Union is going to allow or agree to the opening of accession talks with both Macedonia and Albania, or maybe just Macedonia. And of course, Nikola Dimitrov, whose name we haven't got in here in this podcast yet today, but now we did, has been saying that, or at least in the last quarter of the last year, was saying that we're going to open accession talks with Macedonia. Now that's up and down. That's in doubt now as well.
They're not talking about this anymore.
Right.
They're downplaying expectations. If it happens, they will be overjoyed. Zaev is obviously going to run the elections on the NATO accession. But he looked like a complete idiot because the main prize, which those who were hoping for us to resolve the name issue and move toward EU and NATO membership, nobody was hoping for NATO membership. But we get the privilege to go fight wars in Iran or Iraq or Afghanistan. So people would much rather join the EU, and now that's off the table with the French veto, and nobody's serious. The Croats are not taking over the EU presidency, and they're toning down expectations, telling us do not expect too much out of. There is a meeting in Zagreb, I think, in March. Dimitrov is toning down expectations. So yeah, it's clearly that we're gonna go to the elections with Zaev, the idiot who gave up the name without receiving anything meaningful in return, except this NATO membership, which was obviously what the Americans wanted out of us, and not something that we would have embarked on. This total national humiliation on just for NATO, and
right.
And even for the EU, people wouldn't vote in favor of changing the name. And if it was only NATO on the ballot, we wouldn't have had like 15% turnout. Only the Albanians would have voted in favor.
Right.
Then.
Well, I think we've kind of covered enough about politics and whatnot, and so as we begin to close out this episode 55 of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast, the first one of 2020, I think maybe we just kind of reflect, we'll have our farmers picks, but just reflect on the fact that it is Christmas coming up here in the next few days, and this is again, long weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Christmas Eve is Monday, and then Christmas is Tuesday, and so folks are really focused, I think, on family, on Christmas, on God, on faith, tradition, what all this means, and the politics can wait. It's politics should not even be a central part of our lives, anybody's lives, even the politicians. Unfortunately, it is. But as we close out this podcast, we will certainly wish all of our listeners a very Merry Christmas as you gather to celebrate with family and friends and reflect upon the true meaning of Christmas and what that means to you as an individual, to you as a family, to you as a community, as a neighborhood, as a nation. And that's what's really important. Any thoughts on that?
Here it obviously means families getting together. Soon we'll have the fires around the country, the Badnik flames, where all neighborhoods come together, drink heated rakia and the wine
Yes.
and the songs. Although, with the air pollution levels, and the church often opposes this, it's even considered like a pre-Christian
pagan.
riot.
Yeah,
So the church often says, don't do it.
Yeah.
Donate the wood to the poor or something like that. And some folks do, some out of environmental or religious reasons.
Which can often be the same thing, especially with our friends on the left, the environmental, the religious, those who worship the environment, that is.
I haven't followed how many Australians are blaming, the angry Greta we are now. and we're still waiting for did you get this, we're waiting for the Zaev's recording of the Russian guys.
The pranksters.
They recorded Zaev, and they're now collecting money, and they want, they have like dozens of people. They have Harrison Ford, Billie Eilish, they have Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, etc. So, and Zoran Zaev is in this list, and they say that whoever donates the most money, he will be the next. They're basically trying to get some money out of this, apparently.
Right.
They're going to release the recording of Zaev with Greta if we collect enough money. So now
Donate. Where do we donate?
Sure, website. We can put it in the show notes.
There we go.
The link. And going for it's winter vacation here. People are going skiing.
Yeah, I'm just here. Yeah, kids are off school. They come back in a couple of weeks. So so it's hopefully a more calm time when people can just sit back and again enjoy family, friends, and reflect upon what is truly important in life, which is certainly not politics.
Yeah.
So that'll be nice to see and experience for me, especially Macedonian Christmas here.
We're going to overdose you on Ruska salata, the Russian salad which we eat for Christmas.
Absolutely, I love it.
Which Zaev is probably warning the U.S. Embassy about. They're eating something called Russian salad. And these Vimera people.
Yes. Well, we always like quoting our favorite Russian, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, in so many different ways. But let's go to our farmers' picks now as we close this out. I've got one, and I think you have one. So mine, again, we always like to try and end on a high note. Mine is the former Croatian member of the European Parliament who narrowly lost her seat, Mariana Petir, congratulated Macedonia on the resignation of Zoran Zaev, the former Prime Minister of Macedonia, and said that she really hopes that on April 12 that politicians who love Macedonia, the Macedonians are the ones that come to power. And that got a lot of likes and retweets on Twitter, I think on Facebook as well, social media across that. So she's a good friend of Macedonia.
She could easily run for a Macedonian member of the European Parliament if the EU is ever foolish enough to let us join and give us a seat in the European Parliament.
So that's my farmer's pick. Cvetin, what's yours?
We had the cultural event of the year, apparently, which was the concert of Dino Merlin, this Bosnian singer of these love songs and kind of like folk, kind of more serious, more urban music. He's not the gutter turbo folk singer, but touches on the upper levels of turbo folk. And he has a concert in Skopje, and with all the pollution and cold, etc., and it was like tens of thousands of people. It was the square was full, almost as when we would welcome the basketball or the handball or Vardar for their celebration. So this was the cultural event of the year. We had buses of people from Serbia, from Bosnia coming to listen to Dino Merlin. So people are tuning out of politics and I think going on a nostalgia trip with a Yugoslav era singer who now apparently is the only thing which can move people at this point, at this season.
Oh, good. That's a good way to end, I think.
I'm going to include some music from Dino.
All right, let's do that. And again, a very happy Christmas to you and your family, Cvetin.
You too, buddy. Christos se rodi. That's the traditional greeting here in a few days.
Yeah, exactly.
And you respond with Vaistina se rodi. Indeed, he is born.
Yes. All right. Well, good. Well, to all our listeners, the same, and a very happy Christmas. And we'll do this again next week.
And hopefully again in person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.